as we know, Purdue losing to Wisconsin, and pretty handily. Now, Purdue stuck around. It was 13-13, I believe, at halftime, right? But in the end, Wisconsin's run game and defense was just too much. I told you that David Bell had 240 receiving yards against Iowa. He had 33 against Wisconsin. So, I know it's not apples to apples with these things. Matchups are a big aspect of this. But if you're Iowa's defensive staff, you're looking at this saying, man, we really failed. We really failed against Purdue. And it's the third year in a row, third matchup in a row that we've struggled this mightily. I mean, it's again, I'm not going to rehash this over and over again, but again, Wisconsin holding Bell to that low of a number. Now, Durham did have 9 catches for 112 yards, which I find interesting. And I'm going to pull up Durham here. Of course, he's the tight end for the Boilers, who I really like. I think Payne Durham has an opportunity at the next level. But 9 catches, 112 yards, and a touchdown. So maybe there's something there. Again, we don't know exactly how Wisconsin's going to match up against Iowa defensively. But perhaps Sam Laporta can get going. Boy, I think it'd be huge. One of the big storylines heading into this week is how healthy is Iowa. Riley Moss was not on the depth chart that was released Monday. We'll hear from Kirk Ferentz. We're recording this Tuesday, so we'll hear from Kirk Ferentz later today. I'm sure on some injuries. But if Luke Lachey can come back and be that sidekick to Sam Laporta, you're going to see more 2 tight end sets, and maybe that's the solution against this Wisconsin defense, getting Sam Laporta and Luke Lachey involved more in the passing game. Certainly Spencer is comfortable throwing to Sam Laporta. But Wisconsin just ran a buttload on Purdue. I mean, listen to these numbers. Malusi, 27 carries, 149. Allen, 12 carries, $140, and 3 total touchdowns between the two of them. Now, Allen did have a 70-yard run, and Malusi had a 35-yard run. So there's some big plays in this game. Wisconsin's shown the ability to knock off some big plays, especially in the run game. But here's the biggest thing. Graham Mertz threw the ball 8 times. 8 times. 5 for 8 for 52 yards, and yet they win 30-13. They win by 3 scores with their quarterback throwing the ball 8 times. Why? Because they ran the ball effectively, and their defense produced turnovers. You look at the team stats here. 5 turnovers per Purdue. Just 1 against Iowa. All right? So Wisconsin forced O'Connell into tough decisions. O'Connell ended up 24 for 32. He had actually a good completion percentage for 200 yards, but he threw 3 picks. Plummer was 3 of 6 for 19 yards, and boy, Wisconsin really locked down on that running 3 quarterback thing. He's their running back. I'm trying to think of their other quarterback here. Burton. He was held in check. Just actually carried the ball 1 time for 1 yard, but it is interesting. You can see here how Brahms switched up his game plan a bit against Wisconsin, and it made sense too. I mean, he even commented after the game how he was really surprised. He said this twice now. He's really surprised that Iowa tried to single coverage David Bell, single cover him, and certainly I'm surprised. Maybe not the right word for me because we've seen it over and over again, but it just doesn't make that line of reasoning makes no sense. And Wisconsin got it done. Again, going back to Wisconsin's running backs, Malusi and Allen, those guys aren't, I believe Allen's the kid that's really young, right? He's a freshman. I heard he was like 17 years old out of Wisconsin. So, these guys are not Jonathan Taylor, Melvin Gordon type players, but they are young and talented, and they're gaining steam confidence-wise. We see week after week now Wisconsin running the ball better. If you look at team stats here, this is crazy. Wisconsin ran the ball for 290 yards, Purdue for -13. Now, Purdue wasn't able to run against Iowa either, minus some quarterback runs, which, again, credit to Jeff Brom for mixing those in, knowing that he was depleted at the running back position, and he got away with it against Iowa. But, again, 5 turnovers forced. So, if Iowa can force Graham Mertz to throw the ball, and Mertz did have at least 1 fumble in this game. Let me pull up his numbers here. Yeah, Mertz had a fumble. Listen to the fumbles, though. Allen had 2 fumbles. Mertz had a fumble. Malusi had a fumble. Ingram had a fumble. 5 fumbles for Wisconsin. Now, they only lost 2. But this is not a team that takes care of the football, right? Each of their running backs had a fumble, and their quarterback had a fumble. So the primary ball carriers for this team do not take care of the football. We know Mertz does not take care of the football through the air. Didn't have any interceptions because he only threw 8 times, and that's what they want. I mean, obviously, that's what they want. If Mertz only throws the ball 8 times and he's healthy throughout the game, Iowa's in big, big trouble. They need him to throw the ball 15-plus times, and that's a pretty modest number. 15-plus times, and boy, you'd have to think that Iowa's secondary, unlike against Aiden O'Connell, that Iowa's secondary will be able to pick Mertz off and make it just a struggle. I mean, this is not a... I mean, listen to the numbers for Graham Mertz. On the year, he's got 2 touchdowns, 7 picks. He's got a QBR of 34.7. That ranks 113th in the FBS. He's 110th in passing yards, which isn't a big number for Wisconsin because they want to run primarily. But there's no reason for Iowa not to force at least a couple turnovers from Wisconsin. Turnover battle is the big key, and we'll talk about that here in a minute when I go through my keys officially here. But you just got to force Mertz to throw the ball more. Purdue did not do a good job of that, and as a result now, we look at the Big Ten West. You've got Iowa and Minnesota at 3-1. Minnesota knocking off Maryland in convincing fashion, and they might be the hottest team in the Big Ten right now. All right, and I think you could certainly make that argument. Actually, Wisconsin's playing well, but Minnesota. I mean, let's look at Minnesota's most recent results. After losing to Bowling Green, they've come back, beat Purdue on the road, beat Nebraska at home, and beat Maryland at home. Minnesota's hot right now. I give P.J. Fleck, I don't love the guy, but man, I give him a lot of credit for what he's done despite being down one of the best players in the Big Ten in Mo Ibrahim at running back. So they're 3-1. They're tied with Iowa, who's also at 3-1. So we know the Minnesota game will be huge. But the biggest game of the season, in my opinion, is this game this Saturday. Wisconsin's 2-2 in the Big Ten, so they're not out of the race for the West. Neither is Purdue at 2-2. Technically, I guess you could make the argument that Illinois is not out of it at 2-3, but let's just, for the sake of this argument, let's assume this is a 4-team race: Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Purdue. Because of Wisconsin's win against Purdue, I would certainly put Purdue at the bottom of that, and I'd say your top 3 are certainly Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin.